Have you ever thought about why stress increases the speed you're aging at? This is something I got asked the other day, and it's something that's not overly easy to explain, but there's a little bit more to it than what most people think. So that's what we're going to dive in today. Is why does stress increase the rate that you're aging at, and what can you do to slow down that aging process as well as slow down that stress process? I'm Dr. Jeff Cumro, and in my office we've worked with thousands of patients over the last 15 years, helping them get their hardware and their software working as well as possible. In hardware, I mean the brain and the body. We need to optimize function there, but we also need the energetic systems to fuel everything, right? So if we have a sports car sitting in the driveway, it doesn't do us any good if we don't have the gas. We've got to have both of them there if we're going to have that optimized performance. So let's go ahead and dive in here, and we're going to do a little bit of drawing today, so bear with me. As always, my drawing skills are not the best, but it's going to give us a decent idea of what we can do to basically understand this and to take that next step forward. So this is just going to be a timeline going here, and why do we end up with more and more diseases as we start to head to the right of this equation, right? When we're down here, we might have a few infections. So these are the childhood things that we basically get exposed to that attune our immune system and help us perform at a better level. Through this stage, we don't really have much, and then we start to get like metabolic disorders. We start to get cardiovascular. We start to get neurological disorders, things like that. It all starts to stack up here, right? And we start to get more and more sick as we continue to age. The last few years of aging are astronomically expensive to take care of, right? So I don't remember the exact stats, but I mean you're in six figures of care in the last few years of life, which is just astronomical. So the question is, why do we start to see more and more of these diseases as we age? So first thing we have to understand here, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to take some of these off just so it's a little easier for us to see what we're dealing with. But stress does a lot of different things to us. The first thing that stress really does to us is it increases our blood sugar. It increases our blood pressure. It increases our clotting factors. It increases muscle tone in certain areas. It starts to have this process where you start to speed things up. It increases our immune system. It's good, right? In the short term, ultimately the process of stress is designed to keep us alive, help us get through those stressful times, so that when we have a chance to rest and relax, then we can go that next stage. At the same time, that stress response turns down our hormonal function, right? It turns down reproduction. We don't need it at the time. It turns down digestion. It turns down healing and repairing. Because if we don't survive to that next day, it doesn't matter. So ultimately, everything's designed to survive the short term. The problem comes in, when we're exposed to stress over longer periods of time, we end up with more metabolic problems and more physiological problems in general, right? That increase in blood sugar ends up being diabetes over time. That increase in blood pressure ends up being cardiovascular disease. That increase in clotting factors can lead to strokes. That increase in muscle tone can lead to arthritis. The joints don't work as well. That increase in, what was the other one we talked about? We had one other one listed in there. The immune system. It leads to autoimmunity, right? The decrease in healing and repairing. When you don't heal and repair, things start to fall apart, right? That's the basis of cancer. When you decrease your hormonal function, reproductive function, you have hormonal imbalances. All of this stuff starts to take its effect on your body over a period of time. And that ultimately leads to a decrease in metabolic health, is ultimately what it is. So that's basically what stress does, is it decreases metabolic health. Now, the problem with this is, so let's go back and we'll understand one more thing before we actually dive in here. So as we start to see more and more of those diseases of aging, we start to see more epigenetic change. Now, what are the epigenetics? If you're not familiar with them, epigenetics are basically the light switch that controls a gene. We all have the genes that we're born with. Can they have an impact on health? Absolutely. Do they always have an impact on health? Not necessarily. It depends on what types of things we have present. So it's the light switch. It determines, if you flip it on, it determines that you're going to have that gene expressed. If you turn it off, that gene is not going to be expressed. This is why people may have cancer at an early age. They may not have cancer at an early age. They may have cancer at a later age. They may not have cancer at the later age. If they have the cancer, it's because that epigenetic marker is turned on. If they don't have the cancer, it's because the epigenetic marker is turned off. And we do have a little bit of control over this. We don't have, specific control over where we can pick and choose which ones are expressed, which ones are not yet. We don't fully understand that. But there are things that we can stack in our favor, right? Diet and sleep and stress reduction and all these things, they all make a good change for us. They turn on the good epigenetic markers and they turn off the bad epigenetic markers. At the same time, those negative choices we make, drinking, smoking, staying up too late, stress, all those different things start to take a toll on us. They start to add up. We turn on more of those negative epigenetic markers, those that are more likely to express diseases. We turn off those good epigenetic markers. So both of these compound in the right direction or the wrong direction, right? If we make good choices, we turn on good epigenetic markers and off the bad ones. That compounds in the right direction. If we make bad choices, we turn on more of those negative epigenetic markers and we turn off more of those positive. That compounds in the wrong direction. So we've got to have a little bit of control in this. Now, what stress ultimately does, like I said, it decreases our metabolic health. This is important because the metabolic health is ultimately a big determinant of epigenetics. How does that happen? There are two processes that really happen. We can turn on epigenetic markers with acetylation. Acetylation is something that helps to turn on good markers, and we can either turn on or off epigenetic markers with methylation. These two things drive your epigenetic response. This one up here is driven by that stress, ultimately the metabolic process. So it doesn't matter whatever your stress may be. If you have poor food, that's going to be a stress, right? So you could really list most anything under a stressor that's going to lead to metabolic change. But when we don't have enough energy, we kind of stop doing this acetylation phase. We don't do it as well. So we start to turn off more of those good epigenetic markers than we're actually turning on. So ultimately, what we have to do, where we have to come in, is we have to start changing this up here, right? And this is important because the metabolic health is easier to do, but a lot of people are starting in the wrong place, right? So when I talk about healthcare, I have three phases. We have to go through the restore, we have to go through the increase, and then we have to go through the basically consistency phase. So in this restore phase, this is where we're going through and we're getting enough resources to where we can actually do all of this. We have the resources that we can actually heal and repair. So if you look at a financial statement, this is being in debt, right? Most of us have been in debt at some point in our life, if they're not right now, right? We have to dig ourselves out of that debt. How do we do this? We cut some of those bad expenses, but we also put in better quality inputs, right? We put better information into our mind to get a better job or do different things like that. The things that we do that are going to help eliminate this debt. Once we have this debt eliminated, then we can move into the basically fortifying stage is what I like to call this. So why? Because you're fortifying yourself against the negative things that are drawing you back. This is where you're basically increasing the size of your nest egg. So you have a savings account and you start to build that savings account up. So when you get put under a stress, a bill of some sort, it doesn't take you back into the stage where you're back into significant debt and you don't have to do the restore phase again, right? You could stay in that longevity phase, and that's important because sooner or later we have to get into this consistency or the continuity phase of things. That continuity phase is what allows us to continue all of those things. Because if we just go through the restore phase and we don't ever go through the fortification stage, we're always sick, right? We're always just teetering on the brink there. If we don't go through this fortification stage, we never actually get healthy. So we end up frustrated. And this consistency is ultimately what health is. We have to have that for a long period of time to get all that. So this is what we have to go through to turn down that stress response. But we have to do it in the proper order. If we don't do this first, then we never have enough energy to actually increase. And I see a lot of people that are trying to start out by increasing their exercise or increasing, the things that they're doing, and they're just getting frustrated because they don't have the energy that they need to take that next step, to go to that next phase. So we ultimately have to work on restoring everything first, getting that stress response to turn down. Many of you might have had trouble sleeping if you've been under extreme stress, right? It's hard to sleep. Why is that? Because we get an increase in cortisol. That increased cortisol leads to trouble sleeping. It's activational, right? It sits there, and that's where you just get that stress response constantly going. And if we don't ever get this rest, we don't ever get that cortisol to go down, and it's very, very inflammatory. It causes a lot of this metabolic dysfunction. It causes a lot of hormonal dysfunction. It causes all those other things that we talked about to really fly out of control. So once we have this stage over, that's really where we start to see some of this change taking effect, and we start to decrease that risk of long-term health. When we add this phase in, it takes that next level up, and we further reduce that risk of aging leading to, or of stress leading to aging. And then when we can get that consistent, it doesn't matter what we face. But we have to have all of these things going in there. So we have to understand the stress cycle. We have to understand some epigenetics, and we have to understand the hierarchy of which way we go through here. But I see so many people that are taking this in the wrong direction, and that's not allowing them to get control of their epigenetic markers, and their stress is still spiraling out of control. So when we start taking it in this direction, we start to restore, we start to give ourselves those resources, then we can increase the amount of resources that we have to give to things, and then we can make that a habit. That's where we lead to success. So I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please like or subscribe to the channel. It gives me a lot of information as far as, you know, what are you getting benefit out of? I've got so much stuff that I want to share with you, but I want to share things that you're actually benefiting from. So those are good signals to me as far as what I can share. As always, I love and appreciate all of you. I know your attention is one of the most important things that you have, and definitely one of the most valuable things. So I appreciate you spending a little bit of it with me, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's video.